Hello YouTube. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to get this type of functionality in your high top sneaker rigs. This is a shin collision system that allows all the parts of the sneaker that extend above the ankle to collide with the shins as the foot rotates. I'm going to show how to do this in Maya with set driven keys, but I'm pretty sure you can use the same technique in Blender, 3ds Max, or Cinema 4D to get the same results. Just look for the set driven key equivalent in your preferred 3D software. This tutorial was requested by Abyss Shadows 7607. I'm going to use a proxy rig setup for this tutorial. So what that means is that the geometry is going to be parented to the joints I create and not skinned. I'm doing this because I don't want to turn this into a skinning tutorial, right? I want us to get to the important part of this tutorial. I'm going to start by creating the joint system for the foot. So let's go into the side view. I'm going to go to the left view. I'll turn off the grid and go to the rigging menu. Go skeleton, create joints. Just create regular joints. So I'm going to start with the knee joint. Let's say the knee is over here. I'm going to put the ankle about there and then the foot there. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is now move this into the foot. And I'm going to select the first joint in the hierarchy and go into the mel command script and type select-high. And what that's going to do is going to select all the joints in the hierarchy. I'm doing that so I can turn on the local rotation axis for the joint. So I go to display, transform display, local rotation axis. And I'm doing that because I want to orient this foot joint in the traditional way a foot joint is supposed to be oriented. So to do that, I'm going to select the end joint and unparent it. So hit Shift P to unparent. Then take this ankle joint, go into the joint orient settings in the attribute editor and zero out all the parameters for the joint orient. All right. So I'm going to look at what I need to rotate. It looks like it's the Z, so I'm going to click in this Z section here, hold down Control and use the middle mouse button to straighten it out. And the objective is to get the manipulator to be like this, to look like it's oriented to world, so that I could rotate the joint like this and this comfortably. Like this is how a foot joint is typically supposed to be oriented when you're rigging the leg. Okay, so once that is done, I'm going to take the end joint and parent it back. Now let's take a look at how the geometry has been divided up. So you see how I'm going to be parenting to this joint system. I have the foot, I have the tongue of the sneaker, I have the inside part of the sneaker shins, I have the back, and then the outer part of the sneaker shins is also its own piece. So I'm going to select the geometry, select the shin joint, hit parent. I'm going to select the foot of the sneaker and then select the foot joint and hit P. So I should get this type of behavior now. I can now rotate the foot and it'll behave like a regular foot rig. So now let's take care of the shin part of the sneaker. So I'm going to create their joints. So to do that, I'm going to go into the mel command window, type joint, semicolon, hit enter. This creates a joint at world. And I'm going to move it into position to just one of the sides, the inside part of the sneaker shins. I'm going to go into the front view and try to just really get it aligned at the correct spot over there. And I'm going to go into the side view, the left side, and make sure it's also in the center. And make sure it's at the base of the geometry. Okay, it's there. So from there, I'm just going to duplicate this joint, hit Control D, duplicate it, and parent the duplicated piece back to the what would be its root joint. And now that we have this side, I can just hit Control D for the entire chain and move it to get the joint system for the outer part. And duplicate it again to get the one for the back of the shins. And that should be fine. Let me see where the base is. Yeah, the base is fine. And then the last one, duplicate it for the front side. And that, let me see if it's not too close to the base. I just want to make sure that this joint system is closer to the base right there. And I can hold this, I can select the end joint, hold down D, and just move it up just a little bit so that it reaches the end of the tongue of the sneaker. And I actually want to put this more in the center. I think that'll be a better way to go. Okay, so that's the 4 joints for the shin part of the sneaker. Let me label them. So I'm going to call this JNT tongue, or JNT tongue. So JNT sneaker back shin. Go JNT sneaker out shin. JNT sneaker in shin. And what? Oh, this is our. Okay, let me actually name this. So this is our shin, JNT shin. This is our JNT foot. And we can call this JNT foot end. We don't really need that joint, but so give it a postfix of end. All right, so now that we have these 4 joints that represent the shins of the sneakers, I need an intermediary group. The set driven key is going to be driving the intermediary group. This will allow the joint to be left open for a control to be connected to it. So this way we can have the shin collision feature and still be able to control that part of the sneaker with a control system. If I connect the set driven key system directly to this joint, then this is locked and we can no longer control it. And I don't want that. I want the most amount of functionality. I want to be able to adjust the shins if the collision system is not producing the best results. Let me just get along with it and show you what it looks like. So I'm going to create an empty group, click an empty space here, hit Control G to create a null group. And the group is supposed to be right at the root of each and every one of these joints. So I'm going to select the group, select the first shin joint and go to Modify, Match Transformations, and Match All Transforms. This snaps the group to the same place that the root joint is, and it will also inherit its local rotation axis. I'm going to turn on the LRA for this too. So I'm going to go Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axis. Might as well do it for all of them. So go to Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axis. Now that we have the null group, I can put its joint inside it. So I'm going to middle click and drag this joint into its null group. So now the null group can control the joint. Let me do the same for the rest of the joints. So I hit Control G in open space, select the null group that's been created, select the joint, go Modify, Match All Transforms. Let me break it off here and go Match All Transforms. So this then goes inside its null group. We have 2 more to go. So click in open space, hit Control G to create the null group. Select the null group, select the joint, the next joint, go Match All Transforms. So now the null group is at the joint, so I can take the joint and drag the joint into its null group. Last one, Control G, select group, select the joint it's going to house, hit Match All Transforms. And now we can drag this joint into the group. So I'm just going to take the name of the joint and paste it to name the group, call it GRP, for group joint GRP. GRP. And GRP. Okay. So now all the parts of the sneaker that extend above the ankle have their control system. Now it's time to take all these groups and parent them under the foot. So I'm going to select the foot joint with all these groups selected and hit parent. Okay, now I should be able to select all these groups and freeze their transforms. I'm going to modify, freeze transforms. I have to mention, it is not a good idea to freeze groups while there are joints inside them. But in this particular case, that doesn't adversely impact what we're trying to do. So that's why it's okay to freeze these groups in this case. But it is not good practice to freeze groups that have joints underneath them. They will have their local rotation axis changed by the freezing of the groups that are housing them. Now that we're ready, I'm going to turn off the LRAs because we don't really need them anymore. So I'm going to select all these root joints. I turned the LRA on for, and that one too, and the foot. I think I turned it off at foot too. Go to display, transform display local rotation axis. So everybody's off now. So now we select the foot, the shins. Well, sorry, we have to parent. So now I'm going to select each geometry and parent it to its respective joint. So select the geometry first, select its joint, parent, select the tongue, select the joint, parent, select the outer part of the sneaker shins, select the joint, parent, and finally the back, and parent. Okay, so now when we rotate the foot, we should get this type of functionality. Parent it to the foot, and now we're ready to create a set driven key system that's going to make it collide. I'm going to go to the animation menu. I'm going to go to key and set driven key and open the set driven key window. So the driver of the system is going to be the foot. Whenever the foot rotates, these systems are supposed to respond to the foot's rotation. So I'm going to select the foot joint, make it the driver, select I can select all of them. We can select all the groups, intermediary groups that are going to be doing the driving of the shins, and load them as driven. Let's see what rotation of the foot is supposed to impact the tongue. So when the foot rotates backward like this, this tongue is supposed to collide with the shin. So let's look at the rotation of the foot that we want. So we want the rotate Z of the foot, and that's going to have to impact the, let me select the tongues group and find out what rotation we need to be impacting. So that's the Z, so it's both Z. All right, so we can start by selecting the foot, selecting its rotation Z, select the tongue, select its rotate Z, and let's set our initial state. And now I can rotate the foot to an extreme angle, an anatomically improbable angle. Like, we really have to go as far as possible because we want this thing to keep driving it for as much as possible, and rotate the group. And so now we have the final state, and if I hit set a key, now we should have the system driving, right, and colliding. Anything beyond that is an improbable angle, so you don't really have to worry about it. But if you do end up with a pose like this, if you're trying to simulate the character's broken foot, that's why I left this joint open to accept a control, so you can make additional adjustments. And that might not be the only case scenario where you need to make adjustments even though the system is being driven. So it's very important to do this with groups and not connect the set driven key directly to the joint. The key thing here is to be able to adjust the set driven key curve to get a better collision, right? So we're now going to move to the graph editor. So we go to Windows, Animation, Graph Editor. And I'm going to select the group that's doing the driving. And this is the key that represents the set driven key, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the foot. There's no collision actually happening, and yet the effect is still being driven. We don't want that. I need it to only start happening when the tongue is actually colliding with the shin. So to do that, I'm going to go to one of these extremes, or like a midpoint here. And I'm going to select the curve here and go first weight the tangents and start adjusting it. Right, I'm going to adjust it to make a better collision. So this allows it to look like it's colliding. And if you come to an area like this and it still doesn't look right, you can come to the end and I think make more adjustments. Just really adjust the curve until it looks like it's actually colliding. Yeah. So yeah, you keep playing with the curve until you get the best results. Right. So that's the front. All right, let's do the back. So I'm going to minimize this window. And the back is probably also going to be the same Z. Let me select the action, make sure that, yep, Z is the axis we're interested in. So take the foot, select the back shin. Once again, Z, we want to set the initial state, set key. And rotate the foot to an extreme angle, an improbable angle, but in this case it's up there. I don't go any farther than that. And select the back and rotate it to where you're colliding about that much and set a key. So that should now, yep, allow it to slide on the back. And that one looks pretty good. I'm not going to play with the curve. I think it's fine. It was pretty flush with the surface anyway. And like I said, if it extends beyond, this is an improbable pose, but if it's an anatomically incorrect pose, so you probably won't be pushing it this far. But if you do, the control is accessible and you can sort of move it out to where it's supposed to be. All right, let's finish with the sides. So I'm select the foot control. First, let me find out which, let's go, we're going with the end shin. We're looking for rotate Y. And this is probably it, so, yep, rotate Y. So, select the foot, select this rotate Y, select the end shin, select this rotate Y, set an initial key, rotate the foot to an extreme, select the end shin, rotate outward, so we're getting collision. Set a key. And this should be fine too now. Yeah, these ones seem to be colliding okay. No need to adjust the curve. But just remember, if it doesn't look right, if it's not close enough, you can always adjust the curve. All right, let's do the last one. So that's going to be the same. Rotate Y, out shin, rotate Y, set an initial key, rotate to an extreme, and select the out shin group, rotate it till it collides, so it's touching the shin, and set a key. So now we should be done. Yeah, so we have all the sides colliding. We can do a freeform rotation and it's all colliding. Right. So it would be the same process if all these were skinned. You just want to maintain the same joint hierarchy, joint system. Right. But that's how you get it done. All sides are colliding. That's something you don't have to worry about animating every time you rotate the foot. And like I said, these joints are open, so whenever you get some type of collision that is not too accurate, like if it extends beyond, you can just select your control, which should be controlling this joint, and just move it out. Here's an example of it working on a finished foot rig. So if I rotate this, for instance, this is a skinned foot, so all those joints are actually skinned to the geometry. Let me get the joints into view. Okay. So in this case, I'm using a 2-joint system, but notice how after rotating and getting a collision, I can do additional animation with these controls. So it just gives you an additional layer of control. So make sure you connect the set-driven key to intermediary groups. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. In an attempt to zero out the intermediary groups, I did something that I shouldn't have done, and that was freeze transforms on these groups in order to get 0 transform values for rotation so that I could connect directly to them with the set-driven keys. But that's not what I should have done. The correct thing to have done was to take all 4 of the groups, group them in a parent group, and then parent that group to the foot joint. So select the entire group and parent it to the foot joint with P. And what that does is that that group catches the transforms that are going to be extended to it from the joint it's underneath, from the foot joint, and it leaves. So here's that group. It captures all the transforms, and then the groups underneath it are zeroed out. The rotations are zeroed out, and that's what I needed, right? You don't want to, that was a bad idea to select each and every one of these and freeze transforms, because that changes their local rotation axis and therefore the joints underneath them. And most of the time, if you set your joints LRAs, your local rotation axis, you need it to remain the same. You don't need it to change. So for those of you that saw that and thought that was wrong, this is how to ensure that we don't have to freeze transforms on the individual intermediary groups. Just create a parent group and parent that parent group, and then we're left with 0 transforms to be able to do our set-driven key connection.